Greetings, Jumbo.
Jumbo, greetings.
So glad that you're joining us here on Operation Power, a voice for Black radical politics and revolutionary change. Here on Black Power Media, coming to you each Thursday at this time. And we have exciting information, exciting topics, and we've got an exciting topic for you again tonight, and it's called Black Prisoners of War and Political Prisoners, teaching from the tombs to Attica to the Panther 21. And our special guest is none other than called the Panther baby, Jamal Joseph, and he's going to be joining us shortly. But first, I want to let you know you're listening once again to Operation Power. My name is Inez Barron, and I'm joined each week with my husband, the co-host of this program, the bold, the outspoken, the indomitable, the one, the only, the unbought, and the unbossed.
Charles Barron, a humble servant, first and foremost, a humble servant. So we're very, very honored to be on with my wife of 43 years, Jamal. 43 years, y'all. Stunningly beautiful.
Thank you.
Intellectually brilliant, Inez Barron.
Thank you so much. Once again, you're listening to Black Power Media, and we're so glad to be a part of the offerings that are on this channel. And we invite you to see what else is available, and you will be greatly enlightened. But we want to get started, and we believe that as we start each of our programs, we need to invite our ancestors to bear witness and to be a part of what it is that we're going to be studying and examining. So we do have a video that we share each week. We're going to ask our engineer, Kiru Gichiru, if he would cue that up at this time.
For African people, nothing important happens without a libation. And so for this very important presentation, we begin by the pouring of libation. We pour libation first to our first ancestor, to that hidden one who, though hidden, manifests in all things as all things, that God-Goddess idea in the universe by any and all names. To our first ancestor, we pour libation, Ashe. We pour libation too to our ancestors because they were the first people on this planet, mothers and fathers of all mankind, flashpoint of the human family. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to our ancestors because they were the ones who first gave birth to the idea of civilization, knew we would need a form of governance, and they nurtured that idea along the Nile until it reached its zenith in Kemet. There they built these gigantic monuments as evidence of that great civilization, and they carved instructions on the walls of temples and tombs for us, so we would never forget. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to our ancestors because over time they put together all the tenets of civilization, and they took those ideas and left the continent. They were the people of the first Exodus. They left Africa and went all over the world and peopled the world. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. We pour libation too to our ancestors because they did not sit on their laurels. They continued to improve, continued to evolve, and at each point of evolution, they again would leave the continent and settle and resettle the planet. They met themselves coming and going. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to those ancestors because over time, they found themselves the object of a forced exodus when they were kidnapped, shackled, cargoed, shipped out of Africa and enslaved in diasporas around the world. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to the ancestors left at home, the very young, the aged, the infirm, left to reinvent themselves, depleted of us, human resources. But they were enjoined by us in the diasporas, both objects of a global myopa that ruptured the soul of a people as it ravaged a continent. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. Pour
Asheo.
Asheo.
Certainly, we know that our ancestors bore many shackles and had great sacrifices that they made during the time that they were here, many of whom we don't know by name, and their sacrifices we may never know of individually, but we know that they did the work and paved the way for us to be here. And we gladly pick up that mantle and prepare it and
That's
pass it on to our children. Well, we want to give you now a little brief video about Operation Power, which will give you some of the highlights of what our organization is and how it got started and some of our accomplishments. It's a grassroots organization in the East New York section of Brooklyn. And at this time, we're going to share a brief video.
Operation Power stands for people organizing and working for empowerment and respect.
Operation Power is a grassroots social justice organization founded by local community stakeholders, which includes activists, organizers, and leaders who understand that the system as it is currently structured is destroying us and our communities.
The system, the capitalist system, one that promotes human greed over human need, one that promotes profit over people, needs to be dismantled. These local community organizers recognize capitalism needs to be destroyed and replaced with socialism.
Operation Power was founded in 1997 with the understanding that uprooting capitalism needs to begin locally. Operation Power understood that our communities are the perfect vehicle to dismantle this parasitic capitalist system brick by brick, and the economic, political, and cultural institutions and other systems in place in our local community infrastructure. Whether it's the local school board, community board, city council, state assembly, all represents mechanisms to control the destiny of our people.
In 19... Ashe, thank you. Talking briefly about what we've done. And we do want to highlight a few books for you. We want to bring them to your attention. The first one is called Speaking Truth to Power. And it is written by our own Charles Barron. And it's a collection of articles and speeches that have been compiled over the years. The second one is called It's Not You, It's Capitalism, Why It's Time to Break Up and How to Move On. And the author is our own dear Malika Dabali. And it talks about capitalism. It's both a primer and an in-depth study of what the impact of capitalism has been in this country. The third book that we're going to highlight is, in fact, a novel. It is written by Kevin Barron, and it is entitled Black Rising. It's a page turner. Be sure you have enough time to finish it when you start. Second is a part of the trilogy, and it's called Black Rising, Home and Abroad. It continues a theme and the characters that were presented in the first volume. And the third in the trilogy is called The Threat, again by Kevin Barron. All of these books are available online at Barnes & Noble, and we do encourage you to get your copy. Well, we're excited.
Yes, we are.
This is Black August, and we've got an exciting topic. As you may know, Black August celebrates, it was started with the celebration of the life, commemoration, I should say,
right,
of the life of Jonathan Jackson and George Jackson, both of whom were involved in the struggle for liberation. And it was the impetus for starting Black August. And it talks about recognizing prisoners of war and political prisoners. It talks about the resistance, and it talks about the struggle for our independence, both here and beyond our borders internationally. And in that regard, we do just want to mention that today would be the 100th birthday of Comrade Fidel Castro.
Yes.
And we just want to, as we talk about the broadness of the scope of the struggle, we do want to make mention of that, particularly as he was so supportive of liberation struggles, particularly in Africa and all around the world, and offering support. And of course, the great medical school where so many of our young people have been trained there in Cuba and then returned to their own countries to provide those services. But today, we've got an exciting guest here with us, and we're going to bring him forward now. It's our brother, Panther Baby, Jamal Joseph. Panther Baby, as we know, comes back from the 1969 era and talks about the great era, the work that he did during that time. He's an author, he's an activist, He has done much in the work of talking about working with our young people. He's a director of a theater group as well as director of several films. And he's just a wonderful person.
Yes.
He's been a stalwart. He's a Black Panther Party veteran. He's a Black Liberation Army veteran. And he's here with us today. And we welcome you to our program.
Jumbo, so good to see you.
Yes.
Comrade, brother, sister, queen. Can I start with a question?
Of course.
Sure.
Boy, after 44 years, and Sister Joyce and I, 43 years for you, Sister Joyce and I, 44 going on 45 years.
Okay.
But Charles, here's my question. How is it we're getting older and these sister queens are aging backwards, right? They look amazing. My sister,
That's a
look
good
amazing.
question, because I've been trying to figure out that, she's 80 and I'm 75. And when I tell people she robbed the cradle, nobody believes me when they look at me.
The answer
Can I
is
say the
that
same thing? Sister Joyce is 79. I'm 73.
Oh, okay.
And it's the same. And she looks 15 years younger still.
There you go.
And the answer is that we have great warrior kings as husbands who have provided for us, who've been in the struggle and have made sure that we've had what we needed, even though they were working sacrificially in the field. So we thank you. We thank you. We thank you.
But brother, we always honored to have you on as a comrade in struggle, but also as a friend. And there's not too many people we call friends. You have associates. But we wanted to uplift Black August. This is the month where we say we need to commemorate Black August and resistance more than we celebrate from February for Black History Month. Not to take anything away from that. We need to continue to do that. But we don't need to have Black August barbecues or Black August sales or Black August activities and not resist and use Black August as a time. So I wanted to have you come on because of the work you've done in the Black Panther Party, in the Black Liberation Movement, and with the Panther 21, and why you spent some time incarcerated and all of the education that occurred. Later on, we're going to show some films of the Tombs Uprising in 1970, and then the Attica Uprising in 71. Of course, George was killed in 71, which led to the Attica Uprising. So just wanted to have you have some open remarks, that anything you choose to say, and then we'll show a little piece on the Panther 21 clip, and then take it from there. All yours.
A quote comes to mind, Charles, that you remember that we used in the Black Panther Party was from Ho Chi Minh. And Ho Chi Minh said, "When prison doors open, dragons fly out."
Dragons fly out, yes.
And my other quote is from Brother El Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, when he said, "The penitentiary has been the university for many a Black man." And we'll amend that to say, "and woman."
There you go.
Because when you went to prison in those days, and I went to prison for the first time when I had just turned 16, and I was arrested as one of the New York Panther 21. And the culture had always been young brothers from the neighborhood, that there'd be some older brothers that would kind of look out for you and school you as to how to get by and how to survive. And some of that was who to look out for, how to mind your business. And probably at least once when you got there, you had to fight someone just to, whether you won or not, just to prove that you was no punk. And then once you threw that first punch and got into that fight, and whether you won or whether you got your nose bloody, the other men who were around could then step up for you, but you had to step up for yourself. But what began to happen in those prisons, and with Brother Malcolm, it was the Nation of Islam, and that kind of awareness, that cultural education and spiritual education that Malcolm got, which he turned into a political education, right? He took the teachings of Elijah Muhammad and he added a race and class analysis to it. And so that's why his messages were so powerful because he was able to break down the system for us. What happened in the 60s when comrades like George Jackson, Ruchell McGee were incarcerated, when the Panthers were arrested and going to prison, they would separate us. This is what happened in the case of the Panther 21. It wasn't 21 people actually arrested that morning. It was like 15 or 16 of us. We were arraigned and on these charges of conspiracy to plant bombs around New York and at police stations and railroad tracks and, at the botanical gardens. Of course, you know how much the Panthers hated flowers. So, and facing a life sentence, actually was 360 plus years. They divided us up into different prisons so that we couldn't communicate with each other, so that we couldn't communicate with our attorneys, and hoping that alone in the prison system that we would be attacked, hurt, and maybe killed. The opposite happened. Wherever we went, we started doing political education. We started talking to the brothers, and for Sister Fanny Shakur and Sister Joan Bird, who were in the women's house of detention, to the sisters, starting talking about the conditions, making those connections to the capitalist system of oppression, and that prison was an extension of that, and that we were not there because, as the narrative of the system, because we were dumb and poor and criminally minded, but that we were prisoners of a political system, a racist capitalist system. And then books would get smuggled in. So you get the autobiography of Malcolm X and Frantz Fanon and the Red Book. And then for those, just like in the party in political education classes, there would be some who could read, who were high school students and college students, other brothers and sisters coming in off the street or at the welfare offices back from war. You would teach them how to read they could participate. And we created these cadres wherever we were. And they said, this backfired. We thought that they would get weaker, but they're turning these prisons into revolutionary camps, because we started identifying the prison as concentration camps and that we were prisoners of war. And that planted the seeds. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, for the rebellions that happened simultaneously throughout the city prison system. And then, of course, after the summer in August, when George Jackson was assassinated, and Jonathan Jackson, the rebellions of Black August, primarily in Attica, but a few prisons around the country.
Right. Wow. Great intro. See, I think it's so critical to people to hear from you for so many reasons. One, you had the experience.
Right.
Two, you're a brilliant teacher. You take some very complex things and make it very simple and graspable for people. So what we're going to do, we're going to show a little bit of the Panther 21 clip that we have. And the importance of this, remember, we always used to say, when I signed up for the Harlem branch, I wasn't in leadership. I didn't go to jail. I took my stuff back down to the Lower East Side with Felipe and some of the young lords. But I thought when we got up there to the PE classes that they were going to show us weapons and how to, do stuff. They threw books at us. They said, here's your weapon. Talk about that a little bit.
That's right. Absolutely. I felt the same way. I came with two older brothers to join the Panther Party. And as we were taking that ride from the Bronx to the Harlem office, the brothers were saying, man, you better be ready. The Panthers are like the mafia. There's no getting out. And the other brother said, you got to kill a white dude to be a Panther. And the other brother said, no, get it right. You got to kill a white cop and to bring in his badge and his gun. And I'm nervous as heck, because I'm like, no getting out. I got a 9:00 curfew. Grandma wants me home. But I couldn't punk out. The main thing is I couldn't punk out in front of my boys. We get to the meeting, political education class, and I'm looking at all the cool older brothers and sisters. Some had leather coats, army fatigue jackets, galays. But to put it in perspective, I'm 15, so they're older brothers and sisters. They were 18, 19, 21, 22 years old. And Lumumba Shakur is running the political education class, Afeni's husband at the time, and in the 10-point program. And I want to say also happy 60th anniversary for the founding of the Black Panther Party.
Right.
And if you go through the points, they're very much the agenda that we're working for now within that both of you did as community organizers and when you were in office. You know, summarizing point number 10, remember we want land, bread, housing, education, justice, and peace. Those were the 10 points. Nothing about killing a white dude. In fact, you know, or bringing in a cop's badge and gun. Police brutality is not even mentioned until point number 7.
That's right.
We want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of Black people.
Right.
I'm not listening. I'm trying to prove to my boys I'm not a punk. I jump up in the middle of the PE class. Oh, me, brother, I kill a white dude right now. The whole meeting gets quiet, right? I think they're looking, oh, yeah, this young brother's ready. Now I realize they would say, where did this kid come from? But anyway, I come up, and I'm standing next to Lumumba. He's sitting behind the desk, reaches in the bottom drawer, and I think I'm getting my gun with a Panther logo on the gun. He hands me a stack of books. And yes, autobiography of Malcolm X, Wretched and Earp Up and On, the Red Book. And as I'm walking to my seat, no, I said, brother, I thought you were going to arm me. He says, young brother, I just did. And as I walked to the seat, to the point that was made in your opening video about this system of oppression, he asked me, he said, if all of these cops were Black and the people being brutalized were white, if all of these slumlords were Black and all of the people living in these wretched conditions, no heat, rats running up and down the hallway, lead paint, all of the politicians in power, Congress, the president, the justices of the Supreme Joke, if all of them were Black and all the oppressed people were white, would that be correct? And I said, no, sir, brother, it seems like we'd be wrong. He said, that's right, young brother. This is a class struggle for human rights. Not just a race struggle for civil rights. Study those books and begin to understand. And just before I sat down, you know how we had those posters on the wall, Brother Malcolm, Huey, Bobby Hutton, first to join the Black Panther Party, first to die. Che Guevara in his fatigues. And that quote that he gave at the UN, that speech, he said, at the risk of sounding ridiculous, let me say that revolutionaries are guided by great feelings of love. Love for the people. And so that was my first, not just my first day, my first hour in the Black Panther Party. The myths that some people still have to this day, that we were a racist organization, that we were just about violence, right? And in terms of that, but what made us such a threat was exactly right, that ideology and tracing our oppression to a system of capitalism. So that we understand slavery was a business, our oppression was a business, ghettos that were built around the industrial complex so that we were always the Industrial Reserve Army, there to take care and to support that. And if the workers got uppity so that they can pull us in, and that prisons were another extension of the industrial kind of complex. This is a lot to get, but the Panthers had a way of breaking it down so that you were joining the party at 20 years old and had done some college or had been in the streets and knew how street finance worked, or whether you were like a 14 or 15-year-old kid, a way of breaking it down to make it so clear. And the other key thing is, in a way to understand, we're going to use this 10-point program to organize our people, because all of this is abstract if someone is trying to figure out just how to make it through the day.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know what's deep? I lived on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in the Lillian Wall projects on Avenue D and 6th Street. And, you know, Mark Holder and Tony Martin, they come down to the Lower East Side, because Tony Martin lived in the same housing development I did. So they would
Yes.
come down, and I was doing community organizing, like block parties and stuff like that. And they had their Panther gear. I used to argue with them. I said, what kind of revolution are you talking about? The sign is on the building, you know, what's it? And they said, man, we would go back and forth. And said, just come up to Harlem. When I went up there, you know, the first person I ran into was Michael Tabor, Setwire.
Mm.
And
Yes.
I think he did a pamphlet, Dope plus Capitalism equals Genocide, or
That's
Capitalism
right.
plus Dope
Yes.
Genocide. So I took that, but I wasn't known, you know, like y'all, and I used to take my stuff back down to the Lower East Side. But I'll never forget the Panthers for their development of my ideology. Everybody that America hated, Ho Chi Minh, Kim Il Sung, you know, Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, you know, we like the Sandinistas, and, you know, everybody that
That's right.
America hated were my heroes. So that political education that really set the importance of the ideological piece to go along with the pragmatic stuff we were doing, the breakfast program and all of that happened up in Harlem was critical.
I've been capturing these stories, and we're going to do it soon, where I sit with you. But that Lower East Side section was amazing because it was, as you mentioned, right? It was you, Nile Rodgers, who was part out of that section, who's so proud. You see Nile to this day, and you start talking about the Black Panther Party, the stories that he tells about the Lower East Side section, and then when y'all were functioning out of Harlem. You know, it's amazing stuff. But those community programs, because that's what the people understand, right? If your stomach is growling, revolution is a meal.
Hey.
If you're improperly housed or unhoused, liberation is a safe, dry, warm place to sleep.
Right.
You know, guerrilla warfare, if you're you know, got sickle cell anemia or hypertension or lead poisoning, is a people's health clinic.
That's right.
And that's what J. Edgar Hoover, who hated the Black Panther Party,
Yes,
hated the breakfast program more than
that's right.
more than the call for self-defense.
That's right.
Because he understood what that was doing in the community. And by the way, when you look at the LA raid on the Panther thing and that shootout that lasted for about 8 hours, there were people from the community behind the police barriers, not ducking and hiding, but the people, the community witnessing what was going on so that those Panthers weren't murdered the way Fred Hampton was, because those people had been served by those community programs.
Right.
When Fred Hampton was killed, I did some interesting interviews with some comrades from the Chicago chapter. One of them who was in the apartment, another two comrades who were with Fred Hampton, and they talked about after Fred was murdered, how a grandmother, before the sun came up, came across the street and said, "Can I see what was going on?" And Comrade Youssef and another sister led her in the apartment. That was the first tour.
Wow.
The people in the community raised the windows, and you know how cold it is in Chicago on a winter morning. They put speakers in the window and they started playing and replaying the Temptations' "Message to a Black Man." And you know that refrain, no matter how hard you try, you can't stop me now. And here's the other amazing thing, and I'll pause after this. The breakfast program went on as usual. The leader of the Illinois chapter, one of the greatest inspirational leaders we had in the Black Panther Party and in Black America, had been assassinated. But the children were fed breakfast that morning because people know that's what Chairman Fred would have wanted.
Thank you so much. And we do have a video clip that we want to share, which highlights some of the very things that you're talking about. It talks about how the community was served by the Black Panther Party and how the communities came to support the Black Panther Party based on that. So Kiwu, if you would play that video for us now.
In early 1969, the New York City chapter of the Black Panther Party was running free breakfast programs that fed hundreds of children every morning, free health clinics, political education classes, tenants' rights organizing in Harlem. This was not just rhetoric about revolution. They were building parallel institutions that met community needs. The breakfast program started at 6 in the morning. Panthers would arrive at churches and community centers before sunrise. They would cook eggs, grits, bacon, and set up tables. By 7, children from the neighborhood lined up. Many came from families where both parents worked early shifts, or from homes where there simply was not enough food. The program fed them before school, made sure they had energy to learn, and made sure they were not sitting in class with their stomachs growling. Teachers noticed the difference. Kids who had been falling asleep in first period were suddenly alert. Test scores improved, attendance improved, and the parents noticed something else. The Panthers were not asking for anything in return. No political lectures to the children, no mandatory meetings, just food, just care, just showing up every morning to prove that somebody gave a damn. The health clinics operated the same way: free sickle cell anemia testing, free blood pressure screenings, basic medical care in neighborhoods where the nearest hospital was miles away and the nearest doctor did not take patients without insurance. The Panthers trained their own medical volunteers. They taught people how to recognize symptoms and how to advocate for themselves in a medical system that routinely dismissed Black patients. And that made them dangerous. Not the leather jackets, not the berets, not the guns they carried on police patrols. The survival programs made them dangerous because they proved the government was not necessary. You could feed children without welfare bureaucracy. You could provide health care without insurance companies. You could educate people without waiting for the school system to care. The Panthers were building power that did not depend on politicians or police or anyone who could be voted out or bought off.
All right. That's a part of what we talk about. That's a part
That's
of what
right.
the history is, how it made that connection to the people. And then as we talk about the Panther 21, I believe it was April the 2nd that the arrest took place. And most of those persons who were arrested were in jail for more than 2 years as that trial went on. And we know that you were charged with, the Panther 21 were charged with all these counts of conspiracy, as you said, blowing up flowers and things of that nature. But when that verdict came down, 156 counts not guilty on each and every one of those 100, each count not guilty, each count not guilty. And we're talking about this was the attempt by the government to undermine, destroy the Black Panther Party, and they failed. And we also know that there were representatives who introduced the court case. Fannie Shakur defended, presented defense in that, and was outstanding. She wasn't trained as a lawyer, but she understood the tenets of legality and justice and presented that and showed how there were infiltrators and people who were planted, who were trying to get the Panthers to be involved in those kinds of acts. We'll talk a little bit about that and how that trial case went and the defense that was presented.
Well, Sister Fannie, when she decided to defend herself, I know we were talking about Comrade Baba Fidel Castro. Fannie had read his book, History Will Absolve Me. Fidel was an attorney. And when he was put on trial in Cuba for treason, he defended himself. And his closing argument was, this court is going to do what it's going to do because it is simply a vehicle of the oppressive state. And so, of course, you make the victims look like the criminals and you make yourselves look like the victims. But no matter what you do here today, convict me of treason, execute me, history will be my final judge and history will absolve me. And if Fannie read that and decided that she wanted to defend herself, and there was some discussion about it, Lumumba wasn't sure, said that if Fannie might get too emotional. I remember Fannie, we were all in a bullpen because they had, at this time, we were separated, as I had mentioned, so they had to bring us from different prisons. And she asked the lawyer, she said, when I get this this 360 plus years, do they get to do my time? I said, no, okay, that'll be your time. She said, then this is my decision.
That's right.
And Setchaweo, who you remember, Michael Tabor, said, I want to defend myself as well. This was a brilliant brother.
Oh, yeah.
And Setchaweo, this tall brother with these chiseled African features, and he had a voice like Paul Robeson.
Oh, that's right.
So when he spoke, you looked everywhere to see where that voice was coming from. But the intent was to make a statement for history. So we made everything a political statement or a political fight. We fought to have the most diverse jury possible. At that time, Manhattan juries were white men.
That's right.
And we fought, and jury selection usually takes a day or two. Ours lasted close to a month. We wound up seating 5 Black people and 4 women on that jury.
Whoa.
The first, they introduced all the weapons they had seized when they did the pre-dawn raids. And they put them on a table. That's the first thing the jury saw when they came in, and the last thing were all of these guns. And then we were seated at the table behind the guns with our lawyers. The line of questioning to the police and other people would be, do you know about the assassination of Dr. King, about Malcolm X, the terrorism of the Ku Klux Klan, and the ongoing things that happened with the John Birch Society and the White Citizens Council? Can you understand why a Black person knows that the police are not there to defend themselves, why they might want to defend themselves? And so each line of questioning, when Afeni cross-examined the undercover cops, because the case was made by 2 cops, 3 cops actually, who were part of an elite police unit called the Boss Unit. They were deep undercover, like in the movies. I mean, they didn't report to police headquarters. They had one handler. They didn't even know each other were cops, and brought in this evidence. So if there was dynamite, we go like, well, you're the one that brought the dynamite, Ralph White, Sudan. You're the one in the meeting when Afeni was talking about how we're going to organize a tenants association. You're the one in the meeting saying we should go assassinate the white landlord. So where did all this come from? The jury, we did not realize that as we were making this case for history, the jury was actually being politically educated. And so the judge dismissed the gun charges before the jury went to deliberate, because there had been so much talk about self-defense and constitutional right to bear arms. When the jury came back, they did these things, and the jury foreman was a brother who was from the West Indies, and he was a concert musician and a conductor. And he had this melodious accent, right? Part British, part West Indian. And they would say, Mr. Fox, as to the first count of the indictment, how do you find the defendants? And he would go, not guilty. And he says, that's the second count. And he would go, not guilty. You know, he turned it into a symphony. And people were applauding. And afterwards, the jury came and celebrated with the lawyers and the Panthers.
Wow.
They said, how did you reach a verdict so quickly? The trial was 13 months.
Wow.
The case was 2 years old. You brought a verdict back in 3 hours. And he said, well, once the judge dismissed the gun charges, the rest of it, there was no evidence. So in all the fronts where we fight, sometimes we may not think people are listening, right? It could be in court. It could be on the street corner. It could be, as you all know, when you were in the community, when you were campaigning. You'll be surprised that people are listening, because what we do as activists is we speak to people's hearts, not just to their brain, not just to their pockets. And that's what happened in the case. The other thing I want to say that's so important is they infiltrated our organizations, and they did their best to turn us against each other with lies, false rumors, false evidence. It was known by different names, most famously by the FBI's counterintelligence program. What I like to say to young people, I have a son that's a member of the DSA. When I speak, when I'm invited to talk to him and his comrades, beware of what they're doing. They're listening to everything that we're doing, and they're looking to weaponize everything that we do. And that's why it's important that we lead with love as much as possible, have that face-to-face relationship. If somebody is talking bad about, Charles, and I'm going to say, well, listen, that's not my experience of the brother, and let's go talk to him. You know what I mean? Instead of spreading that rumors, I heard that such and such. I learned this from Imam Jamil. We were in prison together for a brief time, H-Rap Brown. And I remember we saw each other at in the clinic. That's how you could get to see people from different units. You go on sick call. And we talked a little bit, and I said, Brother Rap, I'm going to get so-and-so to send a message to so-and-so. And I'll never forget, he was like, no, what we'll do is we'll meet here next Monday and talk about this in person. I said, too many messages and too many channels, it gets watered down. So we have to lead with love and with direct kind of communication. It's so important when we have all these conversations that our youngins are having on social media and these arguments and these things. Let's get into the room together. Let's get into the field together, whether we're giving out food or helping to make repairs, and sweat together and see what that works. Charles, you remember the best compliment you could get when you were in the Black Panther Party wasn't who was the best speaker or the most politically educated or who the baddest person standing up to the police. It was like they would say, that brother's a good worker.
Good work, hard work. That's right.
Judge him on that, or judge us on our practice.
Could rely on, reliable,
rely on.
Show up on time and stay long.
Yes.
Another thing people didn't realize about the Panthers, these were brilliant brothers and sisters that gave up their life. It'd be like 6, 7, 8 Panthers in an apartment holding down children,
That's on a good night. Other nights it could be 15 or 20 in one apartment, right?
And half of them could be doctors, lawyers, and teachers, and because they were brilliant and they just gave it up. One of them, I want to show a couple of films now. One on the uprising, rebellion. We don't call them riots, y'all. People say riots, but these were uprisings. These were rebellions, and particularly the one in 1970 at the Tombs. And then we're going to show a little clip in 1971 at Attica after George was killed. But I just wanted to show some clips to see the kind of brothers that were doing these things. The one with the Tombs, you're talking about 900 on the 9th floor, and that they weren't even asking, could you get us a jet and so we can get out of here and go to Cuba? They would talk about, we want to be treated like human beings. Right. We just committed a crime. We want to be treated like human beings. And then even after they let the hostages go, and then instead of meeting all their needs, they took the 2 brothers that organized them and sent them upstate to Attica. So they wound up providing the leadership, for the Attica uprising after being released. So, K-Rool, if you can show the one from the Tombs, and then right after that, you can hit the one on Attica, and then we'll get back to Brother Jamal.
We'll sit up there. No, but geez, they got to be near a mic, This is a lousy setup. You could have used a little better judgment. What do you suggest?
You like to say that is typical of this society. My name is Victor Martinez, and I represent all the Hispanic and oppressed people. Now, what I want to say to this press, first of all, is that yesterday, the men of this institution, for the first time, acted like men and demanded their rights. Basic rights of dignity, respect, and justice. This system which has oppressed us for the last 400 years, we're willing to put a stop to it. And the men there now, there are 300 men there now, ready to die, unless you junkie pigs, unless you pigs, restore back our rights. Now make this known to your press, that we're ready to die and kill until you pigs give us back our rights.
See, they was just talking about give us back our rights. You know, we want, as one of the brothers in Attica is going to say, we want toilet paper. We want food, medical care. We want you to stop beating us down, you know, every time you suspect of something. Let me hit it with Attica, and then we'll get right back to you, Jamal. The Attica film.
Attica was fear.
There was 70% black and brown prisoners, all white guards. What could go wrong?
Grab the guards, grab the keys. All hell broke loose.
Tell me this, are these primarily blacks?
Guys were complaining about the basic things like toothpaste. A roll of toilet paper lasts you a month.
The inmates were considered like animals.
They beat you up in your cell and then they take you to segregation, and sometimes you don't come back.
Have the inmates made any demands?
There are all kinds of demands for change in the whole world.
This had to be mediated, otherwise it was going to end in disaster. They wanted to use those weapons.
Put your hands in the air and you will not be harmed.
You will not be harmed.
You will not be harmed. But that was bullshit.
They want to kill us.
We are men.
He was waking up America.
Somebody had to take a stand.
Somebody had to take a stand. These were some awesome brothers. I'll never forget, Jamal. That was one of the most depressing days of my life. You know, I was in a program up in Harlem, I think a college adapter program, working on getting back in school. And when I heard that 39 were murdered, when Governor Nelson Rockefeller refused to come in and even talk to try to resolve this, and they lied and said that the inmates, they slit the throats of 10 of the hostages. And when the medical examiner came with his report, he said no throats were slit. They all died from the bullets of the state. So it was like very depressing to say that they would go in there, murder these brothers like that, murder the white hostages too, because they didn't want to treat them like human beings and the civil rights that we're asking for. Anna?
No.
Oh. So talk a little about that, you know, your reflections on that and the importance of us supporting our political prisoners. We're proud to say that in the state assembly, we were able to get the state assembly to support Jalil Montecune in his release. We were able to get Herman Bell supported with the Jericho movement and all the work, got him released. Seth Hayes got released. Unfortunately, he made his transition shortly after. We was able to get some information from Congressman for Matulu to get him released. So these brothers and sisters that were incarcerated in the prison industrial complex, they were some of the most intelligent, hardworking, loving, caring people. And yet the system destroyed them or tried to destroy them.
In the clip where they talked about they were animals, it goes back to the slave maker and the slave breaker, right? Dehumanize them. All right. They can be slaves, they're not human. So, you know, the marketing strategy of slavery was owning an African slave is not a sin. You know, yeah, I know the Bible says no sin, but you know, owning an African slave is just like owning a horse or a cow or a chicken. And God wants you to work hard and prosper. And so this is that the dehumanization for the purpose of capitalist profit. Because all of these prison industrial complexes make a profit. I've done city time, state time, and federal time. And when you do state time and federal time, you have to work, or your movement, your privileges are restricted. And they pay you, 50 cents an hour, $1. Maybe you get up to $2 or $3 an hour. You start to be able to send a little money home. If you have a family, your family is going, I'm getting a check from him when he was in prison, never got that on the streets. Everybody has brought it to the myth of how this is going. and the prison industry is generating record profits. So it's connected to capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
In prison, when the Panthers were locked up, when we were arrested in '69, and then spent that time, some of the Panther 21 got out, but a lot stayed.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about the tombs, remember who was incarcerated there doing organizing and political education? Lumumba Shakur,
Mm-hmm.
Dhoruba bin Wahad, Sechaweo. Who was in the Brooklyn House of Detention? Ali Bey Hassan, Dr. Curtis Powell. Who was on Rikers Island? Shaba Om, Lonnie Epps, Jamal Joseph. All this political education so that people are thinking about, I'm not in prison, I'm in a concentration camp.
Mm-hmm.
And this dehumanization is part of my oppression. So I'm going to think about myself as a man with human rights, or for Afeni and Joan as a woman with human rights, and to understand that I need to organize so that collectively we understand who we are. Therefore, a basic right to nutrition, a basic right to clean shower stalls. Afeni had to get a court order so she could get a glass of milk and an egg each day to nourish Tupac because of the bad nutrition.
Right.
This is how you begin to use the legal system. So when the first wave of rebellions happened, the demands, yes, were for decent conditions, but the brothers and sisters in these prisons started demanding court hearings, fair trials, lower bails. They had set the Panther 21 bails at $100,000, which is like over $1 million today.
Yeah.
But we said, this is not bail, this is ransom.
That's right.
And so people began to challenge in the courts, not taking the plea deal so easily, not accepting what people were saying so easily, demanding a right to a speedy trial, standing up, reading those law books. So the consciousness began to shift. And when the first round of rebellions happened, one of the demands coming from the Queen's House of Detention, where now the Panther 21, or those brothers that were still in, was that judges come to the prisons and have bail hearings, and they in fact did, with Panther lawyers representing people, and close to 30 prisoners got released, got their bails lowered on the spot, and got released. It was at that point that Lumumba Shakur and the comrades who were there released the prison and came out famously through that cherry picker, because they didn't want to come down through the main prison. And there's those great images of the Panthers coming down 2 by 2 with the lawyers, and then Lumumba being the last one out, and he took those keys and he flung it into the street.
Wow.
Also created the atmosphere of people standing outside of all of those prisons to keep an eye on what was going on inside. Unfortunately, Attica, being so far away, just being a few miles from the Canadian border, and that community being what it was, they weren't able to kind of rally behind that. But that's why when you look at the clips, when you had brothers like Herbert Blygen and that brother LD, the brilliant brother with the glasses.
Oh, yeah, man.
He had been politically educated by Panthers.
Yes.
Right? And they continued to have those study groups, and those demands were more than just, can we have steak once a week? You know what I mean? And a new roll of toilet paper. They started talking about human rights. And when you connect with that, when we were in federal prison, we started writing people who were political prisoners around the world, and understand that this struggle for human rights is an international struggle. But so when you frame it like that, this is what the system really hates. It was like, oh, wait a minute.
Oh, yeah.
This can really work, right? So remember, it was at the time when Malcolm, Brother Malcolm, left the mosque, and not only, went to Mecca, and he said, I no longer believe the white man is the devil. I made Hajj with Muslims who were Asian and who were white. He began touring Africa, making the case for human rights and Pan-Africanism.
That's right.
And class struggle. By the way, he gave this speech at Oxford University 6 months before he was killed, where he was talking about class struggle and armed struggle. So when you start to make that case, Dr. King, remember that speech he gave a year before he was killed, and he said the 3 evils of America are what?
Yeah.
Militarism, capitalism, and war.
That's right.
War in Vietnam is a capitalist. So when you start making that case, this is when they get really crazy, because they go like, this can work. You know, as long as we get them thinking it's just about black or white, and get brown people to hate black people, but when you start making that case and people understand what the system is, again, this is why your opening message each week, you start with the ancestors and you start talking about this system, is so powerful, our spirituality. And the last thing I want to say, I always like to talk about how much did we laugh when we were in the Panthers? How much fun did we have as we were serving the breakfast, and as you serving the kid and he's trying to take some extra pancakes, and you're like, first of all, you had enough pancakes. Second of all, just ask, laughing, being joyful, knowing that we may wind up going to prison or dying, but knowing that we were like on the right side of history and on the right side of the ancestors, doing what we were doing in that spirit of love. I got to have this conversation with the great brother Iman Talib 4 days before.
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
I was at his home with Brother Daruba and with him, talking to him about a project I'm starting to write about when the police raided Mosque number 7 right here in Holland.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the last part of it, listen, we're in his apartment, and the imam was in a wheelchair, right? He's making us some tea. He's being a good host. Daruba saying, "Can you really drive that thing? Do you have a license?" He starts telling us, I could drive and watch me. And he talks about how he's in the park and some of the young brothers were coming up trying to race him and recognizing him, who he was. And the last thing that we shared, I was like, do you remember how much we laughed when we were young revolutionaries doing what we did? Right? And I'm happy. That's my last memory of the brother, right? We hugged, we cracked jokes while we were there, but we remembered when we were these young revolutionaries still trying to figure out life. Forget about figuring out the system, how much we laughed and how we did it with joy.
Well, listen to you, man. Look at your heart. Look at your love, man. Every time I hear you talk, man, straight from the heart, because you love black people, you love our people, you love freedom. Even though the 13th Amendment, slavery still exists, because the 13th Amendment said slavery shall be abolished except as a punishment for crime. So we went from the plantation to the penitentiary. And that's why we have to focus on the penitentiary, because that's where our liberators are. And that's where the people that come out of there, and you, a prime example of that, are going to be the liberators of our people. Well, we've run out of time. If you have any parting last words, you can do that, and then we got to get you back, man.
And talk about your book and how people can get
Panther
copies
Baby.
of that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, the book is Panther Baby, and when you read the book, you'll see people think it's just because I was the youngest member of the 21 and of the New York chapter of the Black Panther Party. That's before Mark Holder and Kim Holder came in and broke my record. They were even younger.
Oh, wow.
But it is a surprise twist that does it. But thank you for that, all that you do. I want to say free Mumia, free Kamal.
Yes.
We still have a few Panther veterans that are political prisoners. So let's continue that fight for all our brothers and sisters who are in those camps. And thank you for all that what you do. I'm always filled with so much joy when we get to spend this time together.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Same here.
And how can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out and have other conversation, or to get you to come to their programs and organizations?
Absolutely. They can reach out. They can leave a message on my website, jamaljoseph.com.
jamaljoseph.com. So we end another program. We want you to come back next week. We're going to have and continue our resistance during August. A lot of stuff happened in August, but what we say each and every week. Okay, go ahead for it.
Just want to say thank you so much for being our special guest. And for those of you who are in the Atlanta area, we want to let you know that this Sunday, there will be a special program, Declining American Empire and the Rise of Pan-Africanism. and it will be presented at the Shrine of the Black Madonna. The presenter is Charles Barron, and that's from 1 to 3. And the address is 960 Ralph Abernathy Boulevard, zip code 30316.
We say every week, the truth shall set you free, and power is the great equalizer. Black power.
Black power.